Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. Yep, I keep thinking about that name, Freemasonry and Satanism. How appropriate was that? Seems like the Freemasons' deity is Satan, Lucifer. If you read Morals and Dogma, it's about Osiris and Isis, Horus, Ra, Moloch, a whole pantheon of gods, paganism. And also, when you go over the Kabbalah, the religion of the historic Jewish people, same thing. Sorcery, witchcraft, magic. They used to work for kings and elite people. Whoever would pay them, they would perform services. What kind of service can you perform with magic for kings and rulers and rich people? Just bizarre. Then you got all the other secret societies, Rosicrucians. The Church of Satan. Church of Set. The devil. S-E-T. We got crazy things in the world, and it seems to me with this New Age and New World Order, there is a grand deception going on, and it's hard for people to believe it. Freemasonry and Satanism. Freemasonry appears to be a front for the Kabbalist secret societies, the Illuminati, and all the material in it appears to be connected with Israel, King Solomon's temple, and this preparation for a new age, a new world order, the return to some golden age for these evil elites. I know that's a lot to say. So anyways, on this series, 119, I decided to take a look at something that I had discovered years ago and had always been fascinated by it. And it's quite a collection of journals. The official source of the Phoenix Journals and Contact newspaper. So you got your Phoenix Rising here, the bird with the triangle. You can find it at this website here. Just look it up, Phoenix Journals. You can see some of the names there. So I did some research on it, and I'm going to share some of that in this video, as much as I can, in the time allotted for a normal Rick Miracle video in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. And they usually run from an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours. I just go until I think I'm finished or I'm worn out speaking. But this ought to be interesting, fascinating, and informative. And I do share material on these videos in the hopes of inspiring people to take matters into their own hands and go do some research, collect some material. Maybe people who view my videos, somebody could write a book or become an activist. In other words, we need to wake up the people of the world. And of course, a lot of people are not sure what the truth is. So I make these videos. I go to the trouble, read the books like the Book of Enoch and Masonry Beyond the Light. I have another one here to read. The Controversy of Zion. And of course I picked up all the Encyclopedia Judaicas. These big thick books I've been making videos on. I have so many more to make. A mountain of work to do. But right now, let's take a look at the Phoenix Journals, and let me talk a little bit about them. There's a list of some of them. I found two websites that kind of intrigue me that I find. And just to show you on this one here, more names of the journals. Look at that top one. Satan's Drummers. The Secret Beat of Evil. So these pamphlets, books, I think there's about 120 of them. And they have all this stuff. City of Phoenix, Death Rattle of Freedom, Crucifixion of the Phoenix, Skeletons in the Closet. So no matter where I turn on these things, it's just fascinating. So this particular website, they have the list like this, and there's the website. You just put in Phoenix Journals. So there's not 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here's the last page, 9 of 9. So, Rise of the Phoenix. Birthing of the Phoenix. America in Peril. That should be a good book. Tracking Down the Killer. The Phoenix Journals. Another website where I found them, and there seems to be some dispute between the different sites showing this, which is, to me doesn't, as long as I can get my hands on the journals, which is kind of interesting. Both sites, you can download the PDF, all 120 of the journals for free. It's not copyrighted material. Whoever created them wanted this information to get out. It's a combination of technical information, local current news, secret documents, government activities, the inside scoop. But this particular one, the Phoenix Journals, is another website, 4winds10.com on the bottom there. And it shows the list of journals like this in the form of books. It even has here, these journals here were banned. But as you see here, when I flip the pages, it has just, you can click the top of the book there. So you got page after page. So let me just read some of the titles of these books. And there are a couple hundred pages. I'll just show you a few. Spiral of Economic Disaster, 95 pages. From Here to Armageddon, 144 pages. Survival is Only 10 Feet from Hell, 123 pages. The Last Great Plague upon Man, AIDS and Related Murder Tools. That's just fascinating. The one that I downloaded and printed out some pages today is Journal 20, the Mossad Collection. That one. Let's look at some more of these titles. Blood and Ashes, Firestorm in Babylon, Iraq. Creation, the Sacred Universe. So these people were trying to get the word out years ago. The Mossad Connection. So there's just a ton of material here to read. The Dark Charade. The $1 Trillion Lie, the Holocaust. Oh my, so much to read here. The $1 Trillion Lie, that's 39 and 40, those two books. Destruction of a Planet, Zionism is Racism. That's what it says here. These people were the leaders back then of getting this news out. A lot of stuff that books I've read and book review videos I've made. The $1 Trillion Lie, the Holocaust, 215 pages. The $1 Trillion Lie, the Holocaust, 39, 182 pages. So I got a couple books, Volume 1, Volume 2. I suspect that those will be on my list almost immediately to read and review. The Marching to Zion. We're talking about Zionism, the ruling the world from Jerusalem. The great deception upon mankind by the Israelis, the people who control and created Israel, who stole the land from the Palestine, in my opinion. And I believe I have a right to an opinion. I grew up Christian. I believe in Jesus. I believe in God. I believe in the 10 Commandments. Do not kill and do not steal. One God, and don't worship idols. Just what I believe. I'm not trying to convince everybody to believe what I believe. I go over this material and we have a conversation. The Beast at Work. That ought to be interesting. Marching to Zog. Players in the Game. Truth and Consequences. 203 pages. In God's Name, Awaken. So they did these things for years. I did look up the Wikipedia material. Let's see what it says. Well, here's another thing that's interesting. I went on Abe Used Books because I've been downloading the journals to my computer as I look at them, just to have a copy. You never know when this stuff will disappear from the internet. But if you go on Abe Used Books, you can buy these. Here's the Abe Used Books website. On the bottom there, abebooks.com. And you can find these journals. Looks like they're 20 bucks or something. The Last Great Plague on Man, this one here. The other one above. I'm just doing some of this on my introduction before I start actually reading from one of the journals. Some more Spacegate, The Veil Removed, the Phoenix Journal. Look at this. You can go on Abe Books and buy these journals. Spiral of Economic Disaster, the Phoenix Journal. abebooks.com. I just thought it'd be important if you find this, what I'm going to read next, interesting. The Veil Removed. Death of Freedom. There's another one. You can go online and order these. I got pages more just on those abebooks.com search Phoenix Journal. Alright, what else I have here? No Thornless Roses, the Phoenix Journal. Tangled Webs. So I suspect, like the other material I go over, that when you buy these things in 6 months or a year from now, when you try to go find them, the prices have gone up. A lot of books I've purchased over the years, the prices have gone up. So there you have it, a little bit about the websites where you can find the Phoenix Journals. And I think another little tidbit before I read I'd like to share. Maybe I didn't print it out, but go on Wikipedia. I think it started in 1985 to 1990 something. So quite a few years. And they were received in the USA with a lot of trouble from the elites, the government. They were trying to ban them. and discredit the publishers. So why would they do that? Anyways, the one I have that I started printing out some pages is called the Mossad Connection, Hot Foot for the Phoenix. The Mossad Connection, Hot Foot for the Phoenix. Georgius Cerns Hatton, Dharma, the Phoenix Journal. Alright, so let me read a little more because I will be making, this will be part 1, of course, 119 of the series Freemasonry and Satanism. Because I believe Freemasonry, Satanism, Zionism, Luciferianism, secret societies, New Age, New World Order, and all this other insanity, 9/11, World War I, World War II, as far back as Civil War #1 in the United States, Revolution in France. This is all documented. Even Nesta Webster and even the Encyclopedia Judaica say that the Jewish people had a hand in the French Revolution and so much more. They have a propensity or a desire for creating and being involved in revolutions, notwithstanding the fact that they make a lot of money. And if they're into witchcraft and Kabbalistic studies, and they can help people win battles, I guess people will pay for that, but it's quite profitable for them. And they've been doing this on planet Earth for many years. Even during the Crusades from 1000 to 1300, 300 years, 8 Crusades. And Lord knows how many Arabs were slaughtered on 8 different crusades over 300 years, where they would march across the northern shore of the Mediterranean, Turkey and Greece and Bosnia and those countries, pillage and plunder along the way. And then when they got to the shoreline of Palestine, coming down from the north towards Jerusalem, and all those towns and cities with castles, they would siege the castle, break in, and slaughter every single man, woman, and child. And split their guts open just to be sure they didn't swallow a gold coin, which is what they used to do to try to save it, to hide it from the enemy. And apparently in those castles and towns there would be knee-deep in blood. Crazy? So we know what happened then. We know what happened even 2,000 years ago, when Rome had laid siege and had controlled Jerusalem. And then along comes the Savior, the Messiah, Jesus, preaching that we should love one another, treat each other how we wanted to be treated. And that's apparently just ticked off the Pharisees, the leader of the Jews. They were expecting a Messiah, but they wanted one to lead them in battle to dominate the world and overthrow the Romans. They didn't get the Messiah they wanted, so the Messiah had to be done away with, and he was crucified. And Jesus knew what was happening. Jesus knew what was happening, and died on the cross so that our sins could be forgiven if you believe and accept Jesus. That's not religious teaching. That's just historic fact. It's like studying the Mayans or the Egyptian hieroglyphics. Those are just facts. That's history. And there seems to be this battle between Jesus trying to save people and God, and Luciferianism, Satanism, and Ra and Isis, Osiris, and Moloch, trying to tell everybody, don't listen to what God said. You can do whatever you want. You can be a pedophilia, a transgender, a thief, a murderer, a profiteer, anything you want. This battle. So anyways, in the Phoenix Journals, and all that will make sense as I read on this journal, There is a copyright position statement and disclaimer, which basically says, this is public information, not copyrighted. When one can understand that everything is comprised of energy, and that even physical matter is coalesced energy, and that all energy emanates from God's thought, one can accept the idea that the successful focusing of millions of minds on one expected happening will cause it to happen. Think about that. That's pretty profound thinking. Why do we have all this symbolism on TV and the movies and billboards and Emmys and Grammy halftime shows, football supertime halftime shows, movies like Indiana Jones and the rituals? And it says here that the focusing of millions of minds on one expected happening will cause it to happen. So we can all probably, if we were to unite, prevent this new age and new world order, but they're convincing us. They even have progressives and liberals now, Democrats, not all of them, of course, picketing with signs, telling President Donald Trump, no wall. We are one world, globalization. They even have the people now, beguiled and deceived, begging for this globalization, as it says in the Protocols of Zion. In the end, the people will beg for enslavement. We will convince them that they have to be microchipped. I'm paraphrasing. Read the Protocols of Zion. Free online, PDF format. And Report from Iron Mountain. Free online, PDF format. No excuse. These Phoenix Journals. Free online, PDF format. Go get yourself a binder like I do. Punch some holes into the sheets you print out. Put them in a binder. Highlight them like I do. Collect some material. It's a lot better than some of those talk shows on TV these days, or other garbage. And some more I highlighted on this introduction. God has said that in the end times would come the Word to the four corners of the world. I suppose the internet is bringing the Word to the four corners of the world, so that each could decide his or own course towards and away from divinity based upon truth. So everybody, apparently, the way God does everything, which from my personal experience in life, God does act in mysterious ways. I've needed things in life, and I prayed for them, and eventually I got them, although it wasn't in the way that I thought I wanted them. It was through a different path. I used to always amuse myself thinking about it later on. I go, man, I wanted this, and I thought I was going to get it this way, and I prayed for it. And later on, I got this, but it wasn't the way that I thought I was going to get it. God does act in mysterious ways. We all are spiritual beings. All right, moving back on this document. So God sends his host, messengers, to present the truth. This is the way in which he chooses to present it through the Phoenix Journals. So this author says, even as I say, and many other people out there, God does act in mysterious ways. I've walked away from my research since 2005 on 2 or 3 times. My friends all thought I was a loon. Family thought I was crazy. And I just wanted to find out what's going on. I felt there was something being kept from the rest of us. We were being deceived, being beguiled. And I had the life. I had a big sailboat down at the marina, motorcycle in the garage, a house 2 blocks from the beach, a condo in Orlando, land in Maine, gigantic boat I had after that, a power boat, nice cars, nice trucks. And I gave it up to seek the truth. Instead of focusing on money, 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 which I knew the power in the government through its economic destruction program could take all my money and property away. anytime they wanted, like they have done for 8 or 9 times, crashing the entire system with these recessions, depressions, or bubbles, or whatever they call them, by lowering or raising the interest rate, or by putting more money into the economy or withdrawing it, taxation, wars. So I knew it didn't matter what I had. Besides that, I couldn't take it with me when I died. I can only take with me when I die my works of what I've done, how I acted, what I believed. Right? Commander Hatton, the primary author and compiler, insisted that no copyrights be applied for, and to our knowledge, none were. So that's what it says here. So I'm going to read some of this. If the truth is to reach the 4 corners of the world, it must be freely passed on. It is hoped that each reader will feel free to do that, keeping in context, of course. So I would suggest if anybody wants to go online and start downloading those 120 books, PDF, and start compiling some material to make a book, just give credit where credit is due, where it came from. You could make a book called My Research into the Phoenix Journals, and you could have different topics. Perfectly legal, and probably would benefit the world. So anyways, here's some of the tables of contents in the number 20 book, the Mossad Connection. Mossad is the intelligence service for Israel, which apparently now is connected to all the intelligence services of the world, CIA, FBI, MI6 in England. And apparently the arch enemy of all the intelligence agencies and these secret societies in Israel is we the people. Generally speaking, we non-Jews, even the ones of we non-Jews who have sided with this grand plan for a new age, a new world order, they're elites, the people who wind up in Congress or running big companies and having trillions and billions of dollars and huge yachts. And even like Bill Gates and Ted Turner and other people who even admit that they want to reduce the population. And they think that we're nothing but a detrimental entity on the earth. We're nothing more than bugs to them. Animals. They've said it, not me. You can go look it up. So here's the index. 1 page. Got things here, let's see who benefits from this splendid little war. Death to Pan-Arabism. So all those countries in the Arab Middle East, north and south, east and west, as we all know, leaders have been overthrown, dragged through the streets, and horrible things done to them and their people. And if you go on Yahoo image site and just search bombed buildings in the Middle East, endless amounts of pages on the Yahoo image site, search bombed buildings, and on each picture it gives you a link where it came from, and you will see city after city after city after town, sewer plant, water plant. It's unimaginable. The relentless destruction of every community and all those countries surrounding Israel. And then they even have maps, put this on Yahoo image site, Greater Israel. And instead of being that little sliver of land, they plan on having everything. And they have nukes they acquired through espionage and bribery, etc. from the United States. And something called the Samson option. Look it up, don't believe me. That if the world tries to stop them, they're going to send those nukes off, fire them off, and take down the major cities in a fiery inferno. They want to rebuild King Solomon's temple for the 3rd time. This is all messianicism. Some kind of Messiah, some kind of God is going to come lead them to dominate the world. It's a lot to say. Wait till I start reading here. Alright, some more pages of the index. You can go online and find this for free. Let us see another deliberate population control. Are you ready for the gasoline pollution truth? Let us uncover some more Mossad activities. They must give you a phony war, a new world order, page 95. This is just the index of this one book, pamphlet, shouldn't call it a pamphlet, a couple hundred pages. Israel antics, Pentagon startled, Europe warned about Iraq, false reports, strategic decisions, Gulf War not over oil. So this is just fascinating material to read if you have any doubts about a new age and a new world order, which is going apparently to be like the Hunger Games movie series. Divergent, the movie. 1984. George Orwell. Look closely at your unholy alliance. Saddam betrayed. Truth or cover-up? Sanctions against Israel. We didn't say Jews. Zionists versus Jewish races. Israel-Palestine this day. 10/14/1990. Because it's not how you think it is. Khazars. Khazars in Colombia. So apparently this whole country, Khazaria, 900 years ago, 700 years ago, a very powerful barbaric country, by the way, located between Europe and the Middle East. And apparently after some major wars and where it became a dominant force in the region, its king decided to adopt Judaism as the country's religion. So they all became Jewish. What is Jewish? What do Jews believe? What do they think of us? I've been making videos and they think we're goy and goyim, which means animals. They think we're soulless beasts. This is according to my previous videos and material I've gone over. So I've read that we come from some demonic spirits. We don't come from God like they do. We're not an emanation from God. We're demonic beings and we need to be destroyed. Every last one. This is written. This is not me. American support of Zionism, benign birth tax fraud, a shadow government, militant Zionist, Soviet Zionist combined, USS Liberty, the ship, stuff that's in these books just blows my mind. If people can go get this easy source at no cost, you can print out the pages, get some binders. You don't have to print them out at all if you just want to read them. Back to disasters in 1982. Alright, so here's where I started printing out some pages and just did some selected pages and I highlighted stuff. And I'll continue the other 2/3 of this video by reading this stuff, which is just unbelievable. Alright, so in this particular book, number 20, the introduction, Sunday, October 21st, 1990, Hanton starts out with this prayer, which I'm not going to read, but I will hold it up to the computer so that in case anybody wants to pause their computer and try to read it, that would be fine. I'm going to read my highlighted material. It goes into a long prayer, thanking God and praying to God that the light may shine and people will learn and guide him in what he's saying. So, it says here, I ask, please, that you read no further until you understand that of which we write. In the recent journals and expresses, and so shall it continue to be, we speak things which seem to have all incorrect definition unto you ones of this current day in your passing. So they speak things about the propaganda, what we see in the news and on TV, what we're led to believe. Apparently, in the Phoenix Journals, they want to tell you what's really the truth. We speak of Zionists, and you declare us bigots and anti-Semitics and Jew haters. So in the Phoenix Journals, they speak about Zionism, ruling the world from Mount Zion. I've been making videos on this, and nobody can deny the last video I made, 118, was on Zionism out of the Encyclopedia Judaica. And lordy, 130 pages of a gigantic encyclopedia, 2 columns equal 1, so it's 65 pages of material, of the plans and the efforts and the history, hundreds of years, thousands of years. The Jews have had a longing and a passion and have had several messiahs, gods who come to earth or whatever. And after they had been dispersed all over the world 2,500 years ago, to acquire Palestine, the land of Canaan, as their homeland again for some prophesized event. And if you go over some of the books that I've gone over, the videos I've made several of them on these topics, numerous, 100 hours. And nowhere did I find any benevolent thinking. All I found was sinister, malevolent thinking, hating us completely. And by not all Jews, a lot of Jews are not religious. Some of them believe in Jesus, have written books. Rabbi Marvin Antolin, Henry McCow, PhD, Canadian author. He wrote Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. So there's a lot of good Jews out there that don't like this any more than anybody else. And a lot of people who are not Jews, who are into the elite and join these organizations for fame or power or money or sexual perversions or whatever. People who join these satanic forces. So anyways, the magazine speaks about Zionists and these plans for a new age and a new world order and all the death and battles and wars and economic destruction, deceptions and all that. And what do they get in return for trying to show the truth? They're accused of being an anti-Semite, and how many dumb people out there fall for this and side with the evil ones against people who are trying to tell the truth. All too often that happens. The masses, and they call it the ignorant masses, which I have to admit I was one. So don't take offense, I was one. Took a little bit of waking up, but in the Bible, what does it say? Ask and ye shall receive, seek and ye shall find. So once you start digging into this, like getting these Phoenix Journals and printing them out and reading them, and you can even say to yourself, this is a bunch of lies. Then go get the Encyclopedia Judaica. Look up the information. Go get some other books. Look up what they say. Convince yourself it's a lie, or convince yourself it's the truth. But trying to stand on the side and be apathetic about it, say, I don't care, ignorance is bliss, is foolish, in my opinion. Your fanatics' effort to kill my scribe and silence God's words, while in the meanwhile you plead for insight and truth to be shown the way. People want to be shown the way, but when they're shown the way, they don't like what they're shown. The same thing with the Hebrews 2,000 years ago, who were praying for salvation, freedom from the Romans. Before that it was Egypt. And they wanted a Messiah, somebody from God's world to come. And when he came, and he taught, treat each other how you want to be treated, love one another, all that stuff, overthrowing the money changers' tables, telling the Hebrews, the Jews back then, the Pharisees, ye are the seed of your father, the serpent. It's in the Bible. So what are we dealing here? Are we dealing with cast out angels and demons and people who worship them? People who want to be dominating over others. Maybe that's why they were enslaved by the Egyptians. Maybe that's why they were dispersed all over the world and imprisoned or whatever, enslaved or controlled by the Romans. I don't know. Maybe that is why over 2,000 years, 92 different countries banned or exiled them or controlled them under different legal means, what they could do, what they could own. I don't know, but that's what happened. Why? Let's see. So we plead for insight and truth. We all do, a lot of people. And it can be shown the way. Brother of earth, you can not have it both ways. But people want to be shown the truth, but they don't want to believe the truth. That's what it says here. Your lands are in confusion. Chaos and cycles have come upon you for the trending and nurturing and setting unto right that which your Creator has given unto you. You went forth as caretakers, and you have instead destroyed. Ye have not need to walk through the ending destruction. But if you turn again unto source and cast the light of truth over the lands, your Creator has prepared a place for you off this troubled planet, if you but turn unto Him and His host in peace, love, and goodness. So to make it short, if you turn towards God and you turn away from being a selfish, greedy, perverted person, not that anybody watching this video would be that way, but you start caring about other people and doing what you can, talking about the truth, talking to God, asking God to make the planet right, and to stop the decadency and the death and the theft of what the governments are doing. I mean, what was it, 2016 or 15? It was in the press that Obama had given Israel more billions in any one year than that had ever been given before. And the overthrow and the relentless assault on Syria, and apparently when they get done with that, with Iran is next, eventually someday, because we, the people of the world, will wake up, there'll have to be some event to bring about martial law and to imprison us. Because as it says in this document I was reading, the word is getting out everywhere. People are waking up. And the evil beings in control of our planet, whatever they are, reptilians, hybrids, or just bad DNA from Lucifer, Satan, I don't know. But they're obviously not concerned rulers over our world, caring about us. Look at the millions of people who have died, probably totaling 1 billion if you add it up in the last 100 years. And who controls even natural resources, farming and mines, and people out west in the United States, all those farmers have been manipulated out of their farms and they're corporate owned and they're making GMO foods, and there's an attack on humanity, if you want to just sum it up. Alright, let me continue to try to read this and get to the story that I want to tell. I'm just giving you some of this stuff that Hanton has said in the Phoenix Journal. For there shall be no evil brought within his hallowed halls of light. You must further use of the wondrous reasoning, thought, and freedom of choosing which he has given unto you to see the truth of the projections as laid out for you. So apparently there is going to be this event. You can call it whatever you want. Ascension, rapture, Armageddon. But apparently some people will remain in a new earth. You know, we all don't leave earth alive. We all have to die eventually. But where does your soul go? And how many people, if there is reincarnation, have to come back? And what kind of planet or will they be coming back to? So what we do seems to bring about our future or our current reality. Karma seems to be real. do good and you'll get good, and do and think bad, and that's what will happen. So anyways, let me quit trying to preach here and get on with the story here. Okay, you who would cast your stones at these journals and slaughter my bringers of truth, I ask you to read through the following brief history, for you know not which you do. You call us bigots and Jew haters, and yet it will be the Jew of God who will pay most dearly the price of ignorance. So we all know most of the Jewish people today are not actual Jews. We call Hebrews. They're Khazarians. I guess in Revelation 9 in the Bible, I've said it before, it says, I know who you, this is a Bible now, this is God. Revelation John. I know who you are, Jews who call yourselves Jews, but are not. Revelation 9. Go look it up. The intent of evil has been to deceive you and suck you within the lies. You have been lulled into sleep by your enemy, and the arch enemy of godness, and you follow without question in mass. So the masses are being led by this propaganda, and some of it's pretty intense with drugs even in the foods, the fluoride. But logically speaking, deep inside most people know the truth. We all know really what's right and wrong. But when it comes to getting a massive amount of money and living in a mansion or a very expensive home, supporting a very expensive lifestyle, and wanting the best for your kids, sending them to the very best colleges, you know, a lot of people will do a lot of evil things to get that and ignore all the poverty out there. And I think there's a price to pay for that, because even in the Bible it says, whatever you do to the least of mine, to the lowest people and animals, you do to me, God. So when you do ignore we people, poverty, homelessness, all this stuff, wars going on in the Middle East, and saying it's, oh, killing's been going on forever, what do I care? If those things come out of your lips, it's written down in something about life. It's going to come back and haunt us. Just reading this and interpreting. Question en masse unto the prisons of disharmony. I petition you to read these words and understand truth, that you may put aside the lies in time. Alright, so now we can get to the story I wanted to tell. After all that. And the other Phoenix Journal videos I make, I won't go through all that pre-opening again. But I thought for the first one, I ought to just kind of explore exactly what the Phoenix Journals were, where you can find them, some of the titles, how many there were, 120 of those books, free. But anyways, this guy starts out on this particular book with the Khazars. I remember the title of this book. The Mossad Connection. Mossad is the secret service, the spy agency for Israel. So let's talk about the Khazars, the first topic in Hanton's Phoenix Journal, number 20. Khazars. You must return a long distance backwards in memory of what you perceive is time. About the time when Charlemagne was crowned Emperor of the West, that would be the Christian religion. That would be 742 to 814 AD, almost 1,200 years ago, 1,500 of the West, and eastern countries of Europe, between the Caucasus Mountains and the Volga River, were ruled by a Jewish state. So these Jews had a whole country back then, but they really weren't Jews. Known as the Khazar Empire. These were not Jews by birth or tradition. they chose religion to be allowed the fitting into the traditional world. So they didn't want to be usurped by the Islamic Arabs' religion, Mohammedanism. They didn't want to be usurped by the Rome's Christianity, believing in Jesus. And of course, when the king interviewed, according to some previous material I had read, a leader from the Christian religion, a leader from the Islamic religion, and a leader from the Jewish religion, who were hugely and largely people into Kabbalah, advising kings and queens and leaders, etc. And they found out that the Jews were the chosen ones of God. And the Christians and the Islamic people admitted that's what it said in the religious text. So the king, the barbaric peoples of Khazaria, the king decided that everybody would be Jewish. So we turn over to the barbarians, the Jewish religion called the Khazarians, Khazars. They began to call themselves Jews against the day which has come upon your lands. They were also referred to as the 13th tribe and Zionist. Zionism is to rule the world from Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. So a lot of people say they're using this as a big screen or deception, the grand deception, the greatest deception. And who would be the great deceiver? Satan, the devil, is known as the great deceiver, who lies. Nothing you believe that comes out of these people's mouths can be trusted. It's even against their religion to say anything that's the truth. Can you imagine that being a sin? But let's not forget, in 1666, when Sabbatai Zivi declared himself Messiah of the Jewish people from the Khazarian region and created a parallel set of commandments, which were opposite of the Ten Commandments. So the 10th commandment, or 9th commandment, which says, do not bear false witness, the opposite would be, you have to bear false witness. It's actually a commandment. These are the people behind the New Age and the New World Order. It has to be a deception. Nothing can be the truth, because that's the commandment of their deceiver God. I know I sound like I'm preaching, but the stuff I'm reading is material in all these books. It's where it's leading me. I mean, I didn't know where I was going to be ending up at this point in the conversation years later. But that's what it says. I have covered this in prior journals and shall not be in the repeating of all of it herein. However, you must have history, for you as a people and nation have long lost the truth. At the peak of its power from the 7th to the 10th century AD, so that's 13 to 1,000 years ago, the Khazar Empire played a significant part in shaping the destinies of medieval and consequently of modern Europe. The Byzantine Emperor, that would be the Christian Emperor, and historian Constantine Porphyrianus, saying his name wrong, 1913 to 1959, was well aware of this when he recorded in his treatise on the court protocol that letters addressed to the Pope in Rome, and similarly to those to the Emperor in the West, had a gold seal worth 2 soldi attached to them. So if you sent a letter to the Emperor in the West, or the Pope in Rome, the 2 Christian leaders, you had to attach 2 gold soldi, some amount of money, gold pieces. Whereas to the king of the Khazars displayed a seal worth 3 soldi. So the Khazar king, if you sent him a letter, you had to attach 3 soldi, not 2. So this was not flattery. This was real politics. So this Jewish leader of the Khazars sent him a letter. It had to cost more because he wanted the recognition as being above them greater. In the period which we are concerned, it is written, and it is probable, that the clan of the Khazars was of little less importance in view of the imperial foreign policy than Charles the Great and his successors. The country of the Khazars, a people of Turkish stock, mingled with the Mongol and the Nordic races, occupied a strategic position at the vital gateway between the Black Sea and the Caspian, where the great Eastern powers of the period confronted each other. It acted as a buffer between protecting Byzantine against invasions by the lusty barbarian tribesmen of the northern steppes, Bulgars, Magyars, Pechenegs, etc., and later the Vikings and the Russians. So these people were right in the middle and were facing the brunt of any advanced other nations going towards England or going towards the Middle East. They were tough people. But equally, or even more important from the point of view of Byzantine diplomacy and European history, is the fact that the Khazars' armies effectively blocked the Arab avalanche in its most devastating and early stages, and thus preventing the Muslim conquest of Eastern Europe. So a short synopsis of the story is, when Muhammad came on the scene, the prophet for the Arabs, and raised an army and had a 100-year-long caliphate, trying to attack the other peoples of the world, converting them to the Mohammedan Islamic religion back then, 1,300 years ago. And the Khazars apparently prevented them from crossing their lands, hence entering into Europe, Rome, Italy, Germany, France, Spain, possibly changing history as we know it, and the growth of Christianity. God does act in mysterious ways. I would like to quote from a learned earth professor, Dunlap of Columbia University, a leading authority on history of the Khazars, who has given a concise summary of this decision yet virtually unknown episode. This so that you may check out historical data and find your confirmation. So I know a lot of this may seem boring, but it does lead somewhere that's quite important. The Khazar country lay across the natural line of advance of the Arabs. Within a few years of the death of Muhammad, 632, so almost 1,400 years ago, and since then that's the foundation for the religion of Islam. And the big argument, just FYI, why there's chaos and warring in the Middle East between the people of the same religion, the Islamic religion, but the Sunnis and the Shiites. One of them wants the leader, like the Christian church, to have like a pope, a descendant from Muhammad. And the other one, like the Byzantines, wanted to be able to pick their own leader, the other Christians, and have a leader. And so one group, the Sunnis and the Shiites, not quite sure which one is which. I've known it, but I need to think about it. But one of them wants the Sunnis, let's say that, their leader to be a descendant of Muhammad, and the Shiites want to be able to pick their own leader as the leader of the Islamic religion. So these two have been battling each other and divided the Islamic nation. That's the point of that story. Just like in the Christian realm, the Rome wants to have the Pope, and over there up in Greece and Turkey area, the Christians wanted to pick their own. So there was a big divide between the Vatican and the Byzantines, and then later off the spin-off of the Protestants, who didn't want to be under the thumb of the Pope. But interestingly enough, and ironically, in this new age of Satanism and Luciferianism, recently, a few years ago, the new Pope Francis put out a video you can find on YouTube telling all the religions of the world that there's no longer any reason for us to be apart. So what is he talking about? And also, interestingly enough, a lot of church leaders from all over the world, even Russia, etc., and even John Kerry recently, and even Buzz the astronaut recently, they all went down to Antarctica, and everybody's trying to say all these alternate talk shows and alternate websites, and even the mainstream media is indicating that this undiscovered alien civilization was discovered under the ice. So I suspect it's all part of this satanic, Luciferic deception. It's going to be a grand deception. Look up Project Bluebeam and watch videos on mine and other people's on the UFO aliens, planet Nibiru, Anunnaki. It's this huge false propaganda swaying people away from God and Jesus, which is part of the Communist Manifesto, Protocols of Zion, part of the Zionist plan for a new world order. They can't have people believing in God and Jesus. They want to take away faith and belief, which is power. If we're all from the Creator, and we talk to the Creator listens. They don't want you to know that or believe that. They have another creator for everybody. Apparently it's Luciferic. Gray aliens even. Beings from where? And it looks like through hundreds and thousands of years, these beings have been described. And they look like gray aliens. And reptilian beast. Even in the Garden of Adam and Eve, it was a reptilian being that deceived Adam and Eve. So I guess there's some truth in the history. Alright, back to this story in the Phoenix Journal number 20. The Mossad Connection. Secret services, spies for Israel. So it's no doubt here, I'll continue what I was talking about, that the Muslims were met and held by the forces of the Khazar kingdom when the Muslims were coming up out of the Middle East towards the Christian lands, Europe, etc. It can scarcely be doubted, but for the existence of the Khazars in the region north of the Caucasus, Byzantine, the bulwark of the European civilization, in the East would have found itself outflanked by the Arabs, and the history of Christendom and Islam might have been very different from what we know. But it wasn't. So God does act in mysterious ways. Given the circumstances in 732, after the resounding Khazar victory over the Arabs, the future Emperor Constantine V married a Khazar princess. In due time, their son became the Emperor Leo IV, known as Leo the Khazar. So eventually, the Byzantine Constantine leader married a Khazarian princess, so they united the Khazarians with the Christian leaders back then. Ironically, the last battle in the War of 737 ended in a Khazar defeat. But by that time, the impetus of the Muslim Holy War was spent, the Caliphate was rocketed by internal dissensions, and the Arab invaders retraced their steps across the Caucasian mountains without having gained a permanent foothold in the north, whereas the Khazars became more powerful than they had previously been. Now, a few years later, after all of that, around the year counting 740 AD after Jesus, the king and his court and the military ruling class embraced the Jewish faith, and Judaism became the state religion of the Khazars. So these barbaric people who were dominating the whole world and region back then, fighting off the Christians and fighting off the Muslims, and then adopting now the Jewish religion. Their contemporaries were as astonished by this decision as modern scholars were when they came across the indisputable evidence in Arab, Byzantine, Russian, and Hebrew sources. One of the most recent comments of the great import is found in the work of the Hungarian Marxist historian, Dr. Antal Bertha. His book on the Magyar society in the 8th and 9th centuries, so the 700s and 800s, has several selections devoted accurately to the Khazars, as during most of that period Hungarians were ruled by them, yet their conversion to Judaism is not spoken of at great length, and with obvious embarrassment it reads, "Our investigations cannot go into problems pertaining to the history of ideas, but we must call the reader's attention to the matter of the Khazar kingdom's state religion. It was the Jewish faith which became the official religion of the ruling strata of society." So what is the Jewish faith? And according to the Encyclopedia Judaica, the culture part of their religion or studies was the Kabbalah, which is, and even in King Solomon with his magic ring, who he could call forth demons. So it seemed to be magic, witchcraft, and sorcery involved. Call it what you will. I'm just saying, using these forces against the rest of us, when the rest of the people have been programmed not to believe in this stuff, could put us in a disadvantaged situation, without a doubt. And even now, since all of the research has been into mind control, and I have the books, and a lot of people know this, again, it's much to our disadvantage because we've been deceived to such a great extent. And even programmed to a sense of selflessness and a lot of people have even said to me, "Well, Rick, you know you're right. But there's nothing we can do about it." God listens. That's one way. Getting together, having meetings, which a lot of places they would outlaw and stop you if they found out people were even meeting at houses. It's going to get worse. Okay. It was the Jewish faith which became the official religion of the ruling strata of society. Needless to say, the acceptance of the Jewish faith as a state religion of a ethnically non-Jewish people could be the subject of an interesting speculations. We shall, however, confine ourselves to the remark of this official conversion in defiance of Christian conversion of Byzantine, by Byzantine. So the Christians were out there trying to convert everybody to Christianity, and the Muslims trying to convert everybody into Muslims. In spite of the political pressure of the two powers to a religion which had no support from any political power. So the two greatest political powers back then were, of course, the Arabs, Muslims in the Middle East, and the Christians in Europe and the country. And the minority in this, and who had already had a lot of problems with everybody else, were the Jewish people. And this Khazarian empire adopted Judaism as its religion. Had rabbis come in and teach the people all the things they were supposed to do and think. So Semitic means the Hebrews. So if anybody doesn't like Zionism, you can't call them anti-Semitics because they're not Hebrews. And I agree that I am completely anti-Zionist. The Zionists admit they want to rule the world, the aristocrats. And eventually, after the beguilement is over, everybody thinks it's a party right now. You get your beer and drugs and free food stamps and money, and everything's allowed to grow. They can just print money. But I suspect it won't last forever. Think of the Hunger Games movie. Obviously, from what we've seen in history, current history, present times. Look over there in the Middle East. Look at a lot of other things going on. These crazy protests. People are asked at the protest in that recent women's march, why are you protesting? Lady said, I don't know, but I just wanted to be a part of it. That one gay parade, the guy's carrying a big sign and says, I bet hell is fabulous. And so much more. I've gone over in previous videos, and anybody can go on videos and Yahoo image site and learn this stuff. It's real. There is a mind control propaganda machine in the works. And people need to realize who's behind it and what the plans are. So anyways, it says here, but it has come as a surprise to all historians concerning the Khazars, and cannot be considered as accidental, but must be regarded as a sign of the independent policy pursued by the kingdom. So I guess we can't call these Khazarian people fools. This would leave you only slightly more bewildered than before. This would leave you only slightly more bewildered than before. Yet whereas the sources differ in minor detail, the major facts are beyond dispute. What is in dispute, therefore, is the fate of the Jewish Khazars after the destruction of their empire in the 12th and 13th century, so in the 1100s and 1200s. On this problem, the sources are pretty scant on your planet, but you will find several various resources which can fill in the early historic blanks. Various late medieval Khazar settlements are remembered and spoken of in the Crimea, Russia area, in the Ukraine, in Hungary, Poland, Lithuania. So these Khazars converted to Judaism and probably part of the Yiddish Jews and all the problems they were causing all over Europe and elsewhere, and all the repercussions that came down on them because of it. So I would say, compassionately speaking, the poor Germans never saw it coming. They were right in the middle of this. This stuff's been going on for hundreds, thousands of years. Think about that. Even Hitler was sponsored and financed by the elitist Illuminati types. These people. They create this Hegelian dialectic. The two forces. All the good people against the evil people. You know, probably most of the German citizens didn't walk around thinking they were evil. They thought the other people were evil because that's what their government was teaching. Just like the Shiites and the Sunnis, the Hegelian dialectic, the two opposing forces. You know, it's ridiculous. They're all Muslims, believe in Muhammad and the Quran, their Bible, but yet they're going to continue to fight each other. But it's the leaders that are controlling the thing. The masses of citizens, whether they're Shiites or Sunnis, probably just want to live their life and get along. Like the rest of us all over the world. Even in the Orient, all the chaos and anarchy and bloodbaths have been inspired by these communist Illuminati types. People trying to change the world, apparently with some background into demonic interdimensional communication with some very evil beings. Cast out angels, whatever, biblically stuff. The Book of Enoch. Masonry, the front for the Judaism, Zionist, Illuminati fronts. Dead Sea Scrolls, all that stuff I've been going over. Alright, so they were in the Crimea, Ukraine, Hungary, Poland, Lithuania. The general picture that the energies for your consideration, dear ones, from these fragmentary pieces of... This whole story is going to take another turn, but the background here is necessary. Documented information is that the migration of Khazar tribes and communities into those regions of Eastern Europe, mainly Russia and Poland, were at the dawn of the modern age, as you call it, the greatest concentration of Jews were found to be located. So all this turmoil, all these difficulties, and why all the Jews were fleeing Russia, welcomed into Germany back then. And a lot of Jews thought Germany was their Garden of Eden, their utopia. And a lot of Jews thought United States, when they became here and they became so wealthy and took over everything under very aggressive and ruthless conditions, thought this was their kingdom and their Garden of Eden and their utopia. But the leadership of these Zionist Jewish people worldwide had a different plan, and that was to have their own national homeland, and with newspapers, magazines, and rabbis and teachings in their churches and their synagogues were riling everybody up for this future event, the new age and the new world order. You talk about separation of church and state. They didn't separate church and state, but they wanted to separate our government and church, and they've infiltrated our government and church. There's an insane plan underway. It's been going on for a long time. And if I keep reading this Phoenix Journal, you'll see it quite clearly. A substantial majority of Eastern Jews, and hence world Jewry, came from the tribes of the Khazar, not of Semitic origin. So I always say when I make these book reviews, people who did this stuff were a lot smarter than me. I was pretty much just a happy-go-lucky guy down by the beach in Cocoa Beach with a sailboat and beach house and having a good time. But I happened to notice, I had my own business, and I just noticed things. And I had an electronic engineering background, worked at a major aerospace company 10 years. I just happened to notice it. I'm one of those people who does pay attention to the world around me. I ask questions. I make a lot of people upset by asking questions. How many times have I talked about things, initiated a conversation, and people said, well, you can't talk about religion, you can't talk about politics. Who made those rules? Who doesn't want us to talk about those things? People who care about us, looking out for our best interests? I think not. The far-reaching implication of this fact should explain to you the great caution exercised by historians approaching the subject if it were not avoided altogether. So nobody wants to talk about where the Jews came from. They're not even Jews. They're not Hebrews. They're Khazars. But there is plenty of documentation in historical archives to prove this information which I present to you. Get this. I guess I was ahead of my time here before reviewing this. In the 1973 encyclopedias that I've been going over that are quite heavy. I have to put this on a scale. I could probably use these to work out. Encyclopedia Judaica, 1973 edition, is what I have. And I've read this and I've been making videos, FYI, saying all the same things I'm reading here. For instance, the article Khazars is signed by Dunlap, but there is a separate section dealing with the Khazar Jews after the fall of the kingdom, signed by the editors, and written with the obvious intent to avoid upsetting believers in the dogma of the chosen race. So the Jews have a homeland, biblically prophesized. They're not even real Jews. They're not God's chosen people. They want to rebuild King Solomon's temple. It's all a fraud. I guess they are into the Kabbalah and other occultic studies. So apparently they're Satanists and Luciferians and all these other pagan gods. Just saying. The Turkish-speaking Khazarites, a fundamentalist Jewish sect of the Crimea, Poland, and elsewhere, have affirmed a connection with the Khazars, which is perhaps confirmed by evidence from folklore and anthropology as well as language. There seems to be considerable amount of evidence attesting to the continued presence in Europe of the descendants of the Khazars. How important in quantitative terms is that presence of Khazarian sons of Joseph in the tents of Shem? So how important is it that the bulk of the people we think are Jews are not Jews, but they're under the tent of Judaism? What's it say in Revelation, in Bible, Revelation 9? I know who you are, Jews who call yourselves Jews, but you're not. Interesting to be in the Bible. And so much more documentation. So apparently these people, as we know on TV programming, Super Bowl halftime shows, all these satanic rituals, Emmys, Grammys, Katy Perry, you can look this stuff up. They're into a religion, and it apparently is a demonic religion. Which means they don't have a lot of compassion and concern or empathy for the rest of us. Just the opposite. They think we should be enslaved, and we were born to serve them. Look up the Jewish Utopia by Professor Higgins. Look up the Protocols of Zion. So much more I've gone over. This is what they think. Listen to what Benjamin Netanyahu said in Fink's Bar. Go look it up. Prime Minister Sharon said in a heated argument in his Congress, don't worry about the USA, we control the USA. And all that material is in this journal. So here it says, one of the most radical proponents of the hypothesis concerning the Khazar origins of Jewry is professor of medieval Jewish history in Tel Aviv University, A.N. Polak. His book, Khazaria in Hebrew, was published in 1944. So people know this stuff. They're fooling the rest of us. These elites know these Jews are not Jews. In a second edition in 1951, in his introduction, he writes that the facts demand a new approach both to the problem of the relations. A new approach both to the problem of relations between the Khazar Jewry and the other Jewish communities. Now, I've said all along in Germany that a lot of Jews were imprisoned, fleeced of all their gold and belongings. A lot of them probably died in the camps. And I've been saying the bad Jews had to kill the good Jews. So it says here the problem of the relations between the Khazar Jewry and the Jewish communities, and to the question of how far we can go in regarding this Khazar Jewry as the nucleus of the large Jewish settlement in Eastern Europe. The descendants of this settlement, those who stayed where they were, those who were immigrated to the United States and to other countries. So again, and then of course they bashed Henry Ford for writing his material in the newspaper he purchased just to publish the material, because all the mainstream newspapers back in the 1920s, plus or minus, would not say what was happening before everybody's eyes. And they called him an anti-Semite. But these people weren't really Hebrews. They were Yiddish. They were Khazars. So how could Henry Ford be an anti-Semite? And those who went to Israel constitute now a large majority of the world Jewry. The above was written before the full extent of the Holocaust was known. But that does not alter the fact of the matter. So again, I say a lot of the Jewish people who were killed in Germany, but they really weren't killed in Germany. They were exported to Poland, where apparently they were put in camps. Just an interesting FYI. They were imprisoned in Poland. The fact only confirms and documents with proof and assumption that the majority of the surviving Jews intent upon establishing a world dominion are of Khazar origin. This means that their ancestors came not from Jordan, the Middle East, but from the Volga, not from Canaan, Palestine, but from the Caucasian Mountains. So these are the Nordic white peoples, by the way. once believed to be the cradle of the Aryan race. There you go. And that genetically they are more closely related to the Hun, Uighur, and Magyar tribes than to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Since this is true, the term anti-Semitism is void of meaning. That's what it says here. On the bottom. Can you imagine 120 Phoenix Journal magazines on all kinds of topics? And it seems well researched and all that. I've verified a lot of this in my going on 13 years of reading books and watching videos and magazines and thousands and tens of thousands press releases, paying attention to what's in the news, the propaganda fed to the people. It's in the news on TV, and then you're down at the shopping grocery store, standing in line at the deli, and you hear people talking about it, quoting what they heard in the news as if it's gospel. But they don't want to go to church anymore and listen to the gospel. A lot of people have been led astray. Not that I was a very strong church-going person, but I was a firm believer all my life. I grew up Christian, Catholic, went to private Catholic school for a while. So, I wasn't really religious, but God was assumed. And I didn't run around assuming any bad thoughts about Jewish people or any bad thoughts about Muslims or Chinese, Buddhists, Hindu, Vietnamese, Mayans, Peruvians, American Indians. I thought we all should get along. But little did I know there are evil forces in our world planning something entirely different than we all getting along. The Hegelian dialectic, they're dividing everybody against each other. These evil forces have a plan. As the story of the Khazar Empire emerges from the past, you may as well prepare yourselves for the most cruel hoax which history has ever perpetrated. So be it. It is the word, and so it is. I trust you begin now to understand more fully the cause and reaction of that which is displayed before you in unfolding confusion. You people trapped within the lie, may God allow the showing of truth unto a weary and confused people of earth planet. I stand ready, and I know my purpose, and I await your call. I am Anton, Georgius Sirius Anton. I'm just reading what I highlighted. Postscript in reference to Mossad. Mossad is the secret Israeli spy organization. And here he says something, this is very important because I will be addressing this in this video. And there will be a part 2 just to this pile of documents in my hand, because all this pre-discussion is not getting to the point of what I want to talk about, the truth here, about what is going on for the last 50 years with these Mossad, Israeli spy agencies, what they've done here to the United States, probably all over Europe. Anybody who gets in their way, likely to be assassinated, including politicians and citizens. I suggest for confirmation of events which I have previously outlaid for you, and so that by you might better understand that which I shall be given forth, please read. And there's this book I went online on abebooks.com. $3.50 and free shipping. And remember, all these cheap books that nobody seems to be hot after. 6 months later, when I look up these things, they're $20 or $80 or even $200 or $300. But apparently, the Mossad organization, Israel, and a lot of powers in the world tried to ban this book, even through legislation over in Europe. But in the United States, it backlashed, and some judge said you can't ban it, and it became a bestseller, and you can still pick it up for $3.50 on abebooks.com and probably other used book sites. By Way of Deception by Victor Ostrowski and Claire Hoy. It's right in the middle of the screen there, By Way of Deception. So this was an Israeli Mossad agent. He was a secret spy. He came out, knew a lot of things, did a lot of things, and wrote a book and told a lot of things. Can you imagine how upset Israel would have been about that? It can be obtained through American West publishers and possibly in your libraries. Efforts have been to ban the book from publication and distribution, or you can wait and take my word for the truth of it. Trotsky, however, was a Kindon member of an assassination unit and became a KUSA, intelligence case officer. If nothing else, you will find the truth most discomforting indeed. Salute. So, by way of deception, Abe used books. So I have one more approximate half hour on this video, and now we'll get into some dirt by Mossad and other peoples involving this conspiracy of a new age and a new world order, deceiving we the people. Remember, this is back in 1990. And so this stuff here that alludes to something was going to happen, like 9/11, which did happen. It clearly says it in this material. He shouts it out. He says, "What? Mark my word. They have plans for this." It says it here. That's why I thought it was so important to make this video and share this information. All right, let me continue. Another half an hour on this video, and hopefully this will be some rather interesting material. But it's page 16 on the journal, the Mossad Connection. And I just went through the index looking for some certain things. So I don't have all the pages in a row, just different topics. This one here is, says on the top here, the New World Order. It only remains to be seen if you will do anything about it. And then the next topic is Newt Gingrich. So this is going to be interesting. Quite interesting. Because I had a revelation. Call it whatever you want to. But I read a little bit about Newt Gingrich. About why he got into some problems. And I said to myself, wow, the things he did, that's right in line with Aleister Crowley. And Aleister Crowley changed his name to Crowley, so it actually spelled out in numerology 666. They have numerology calculators online. You can put your name in there and see what the numerical value is. A equals 6, B equals 12, C equals 18, D equals 24. You just keep adding 6. So I knew that, and other people. Eric Schmidt, CEO from Google, 666. Pierre Manat, the guy who conspired to bring about the European Union, the EU, 666. These evil people are into this weird satanic thing, Kabbalistic studies, whatever the occult. So for whatever reason, I just said Newton Gingrich has to be 666. And I typed in Newt Gingrich, and his middle initial Gingrich, all the variations, Newt. I could not get 666. Pursued it for a couple days. I was just like, was determined. I can't explain it. So finally I wound up at Wikipedia. And he really wasn't born Newton Gingrich, he was adopted. His name was Newton McPherson. And McPherson in a numerology calculator is 666. How did I know that? Well, when I found Eric Schmidt, CEO for Google, to be 666. There's something to this stuff. Make no doubt about it. The symbolism is everywhere. So anyways, what does Hanton in the number 20 of the pamphlet, the Mossad Connection, have to say about this? Watch this man. This man is completely involved with the budget of the government at this time. He is also the one who has the bill up for legislation, which will allow the complete negation of your Bill of Rights by executive order. This man is dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. So when I saw that, I go, oh my. A few years ago, I discovered that he was a McPherson, and McPherson is 666. Then I'm reading this, and it says he's a dangerous, dangerous man. Just so funny how this thing keeps coming full circle. So education is the next topic. Today, your national report cards, I guess Hanton's talking to the rest of us, we the people, came out and were made public. So they had a national report card, like when you get a report card in school. And you flunked America, he says. Your educational system has fallen, just as was arranged decades ago. Just like during the 1920s, the communist hearings in the United States in Congress, they said they were infiltrating all these institutions, religious, education, medical, everything, business. And they were going to discredit it, destroy it, change it to the part of this communist revolution, filling it full of people who were weak-willed and believed that they could just party, and that the government was going to take care of them and then ship all the jobs overseas. I mean, you know, if you're standing there in a graveyard and some people drag you to the graveyard, hit you in the head, and you're dazed and you're bloody, and they start to dig a big rectangular hole, like a grave hole, what would your brain think? Would you think that, wait a minute, they're going to put me in that hole? Well, if you look at what's going on in the world today, somebody is digging a hole. And people just standing there like a zombie. A lot of people, not everybody. And we're going to allow this new age and new world order. They see the FEMA camps. They've seen the coffins. They've seen the false terror threats and actions, activities. They've seen 9/11. They've seen what happened to the people in the Middle East. Are people so dense that they don't understand that's going to happen to them next? They've seen Hunger Games, the movie. We all have. So anyways, he's saying that America, we failed on our report cards for being intelligent and awake. And ignorant people do not fight back. If rulers can keep the people ignorant, the battle is won. How do you think you are doing? Is it remotely possible, beloved ones, Hanton says, that the government might have underestimated the awakening of you, the masses? Well, they've been doing Jade Helm 15 in 2015. They got computerized programs now that'll make the decision on who's an enemy and who will be killed instantly, not people. What kind of resources and laser beams from satellites and frequencies they can emit from our cell phones? What if they microchip everybody? And computers are making all these decisions that who is a friend and foe of this evil empire being created. Remember, it's the good people who will be considered evil. Wouldn't God smile if that could be so? So he's saying God would smile if we woke up. Please allow it to be so. All right, some more reading here. You had all better hear well that which Saddam Hussein speaks of as the Arab relationship to God. They are a God-respecting segment of mankind, and you have forsaken God. Guess which side will have attention when called upon? Of course, according to the propaganda, nobody in America believes that the Iraqi people were religious. But I imagine the population of Iraq were probably religious, innocent Arabs. They didn't want to even be in Saddam's army, most likely. Guess which side shall have the attention when called upon? So whose side do you think God is on right now, if he's on anybody's side? The side of all the Arabs who have been slaughtered and are continuing to be slaughtered? Or the people who are promoting the rainbow, transgender, pedophilia agenda in the United States and the world, falling for the beguilement and deception by those evil forces bringing about the new age and new world order? whose side do you think God would be on? That's a question. The funny thing is, they will ask God, and you will not. Oil, you will pray for victory, which is built on greed and bloodshed. And in the ending of it all, it shall be those of God who shall prevail. So I imagine at the end of this whole evil reality we're in the end, God will prevail. I repeat something. Islam means to submit. So their religion means to submit to God. I'm not talking about the leaders now. I'm talking about the citizens, the ones who have been there. Go look up buildings bombed in the Middle East. You won't believe the cities and the countries and the devastation. There's no war on terror. It's a complete destruction of all of the towns and buildings and factories and everything, sewer plant, water plants. They're being completely genocided, and the ones that are not killed are being shipped overnight in Europe and the United States. It's in the news. Neighborhoods in Pennsylvania and elsewhere, even here. I've got the paper article. I can show you this right here. I had this lying around. Refugee settlement in Asheville. This is all planned stuff. Here's another one. 7 white protesters arrested during Black Lives Matter. I keep saying, refugee settlement. Western North Carolina has been considered a resettlement site for refugees by the International Rescue Committee of Global Aid and Humanitarian Organization. Question. It's rhetorical, we all know the answer. But why do all the people have to leave the Middle East? Why, if you look up Yahoo Images, have all their cities and towns and roads and waterways and everything you need for survival and been destroyed? Why do they have maps for a greater Israel? Why are all these Jews really not Jews? So the whole fraud thing about giving them a homeland, why are they trying to rebuild King Solomon's temple? What does it all represent? God's wishes? Or some evil entities? What do their books say about us? I've made videos on this. I think these are just fair questions. Nobody wants to hate Jewish people. One thing, a lot of them probably are not really Jewish, and Jewish is not an ethnic thing. It's not like they're black or brown or red or yellow. They're apparently some people who have adopted a particular religion, which believes in what? And Jesus, the Messiah that was expected a couple thousand years, was preaching to treat each other how you want to be treated, to love one another. The people back then, their religion, not these Khazars, but the people back then, the Pharisees, rejected it and had Jesus crucified. And then apparently Jesus rose from the dead. While he was alive, he was performing miracles and all of that. So apparently, prophecy was fulfilled. Jesus did come, and in my opinion, was sent by God. We're all spiritual beings, and when we leave this planet Earth as a biological entity, we're going back to the spirit world. But where are we going to wind up? I don't think they're going to take the mass murderers and welcome them into God's mansions and God's world as a set-aside place, just in the biblical books. It's important stuff that people want to say doesn't exist. The more I go over the material, it does exist. There is a deception. There is a deceiver. All right. So it says here, Hanton says, I repeat something. Islam means to submit. And that in turn means that within the Islamic faith, jihad's holy wars are glorified. So these people believe strongly what they're doing. And of course, they've pretty much diluted Christianity in the world intentionally. And even the current Pope says you don't even need to believe in Jesus or whatever to go to heaven. Islamic faith further is biased on, based on Christness. So the Islamic faith is based. They believe in Jesus. You are sorely misled if you believe you are not going to go to war with Christians. Christians will be declared the enemy, who surpass anything that you have ever witnessed in modern times. True Christianity, on the other hand, and the bloodbath of the Holy War, on the other hand. Stand warned, O people of earth, for you are about to begin your ending. So let's talk about Syria. That's in this thing. There's a bunch of much more pertinent information I wanted to get to about the topic I wanted to discuss, but I think I needed to have a grand opening and discussion about the Phoenix Journals, a little bit about them. And I can make part 1, 2, part 3, part 4, part 50 if I want to go after these things for years. But let's talk about Syria, because Syria is under siege and threat now of almost being annihilated. Relentlessly, of course, after Afghanistan, Iraq, Tunisia, Yemen, Ukraine, Egypt, Libya, and there's so many more nations surrounding Israel. Lebanon. Syria is a worse situation than even Saddam Hussein can point out for you have no integrity from one minute unto the next, except as it benefits your purpose to world control and oil procurement, along with serving the best interest of Israel. So Syria is in a worse situation than even Hussein. Okay, it says here, the U.S. and Syria made a deal. Think about this, back in 1990. In exchange for Syria relinquishing claims to the Israel-occupied Golan Heights. Think about the United States' involvement in this. Our leaders controlled by Israel. All these politicians and leaders wouldn't be where they were without the Israeli Zionist Jewish money. So Israel, the United States and Syria made a deal in exchange for Syria in relinquishing claims to the Israel-occupied Golan Heights. So Israel is occupying the land and sending some troops to park in Saudi Arabia. Syria will get a substantial payment from the U.S., and you will just forget about the inconvenience of the downing of Pan AM Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland, in which 270 U.S. lives were lost. So apparently there were some implications that Syria was behind that. But the United States is about to make a deal with them and give them a bunch of money if they will supply troops for what the United States, apparently Israel, wants to do. And the leader will get a bunch of money. This deal was cut even before Baker went on his vacation to the Middle East and Israel, and also Iran during the congressional recess. So even back then, 1990, you got Secretary of State Baker going to the Middle East and Israel and also Iran during the congressional recess. It had already been arranged prior to any invasion of anything, just as the rest of the planned happenings. So there was a planned happening way before 9/11, way before 2000, 1990. We all know that the United States went into Iraq. Has anyone told you that in the past 2 weeks of August 1990, that there has been a time of widespread massacres in Syria? So back in 1990, there were widespread massacres in Syria. This new ally of the West in the Persian Gulf crisis has, at the conduction of the government of President Assad, killed outright more than 5,500 people. So it was a political purge of people opposing to giving the Israeli government the Golan Heights, and other things. 5,500 people is the number proven and accounted for with additional body parts unidentified. So there were more than that. This has gone completely unreported in the established media. You see, a lot of Syrians didn't like the New Deal. It's like I just said. Mr. Bush sits with this murderer of his own people and calls him Mr. President Assad, the progressive leader of a democratized Syria. As soon as the President George Bush embraced his new ally, Assad ordered the massacres of various political opponents, both real and perceived. First, Assad ordered the roundup of 870 members of the Muslim Brotherhood from Aleppo and Latanka. They were taken to Damascus and tortured for 2 days before being put to death. Now remember, this is an invasion out of Iraq. Came from the United States. Our government's controlled by Israel, as Prime Minister Sharon of Israel said. Look it up. Then Assad moved 3,000 troops to the province of Deir, which adjoins Iraq. So Syria was giving a lot of money to help us take out Iraq, with orders to shoot anybody who broke a 9 p.m. curfew. So near the border of Iraq, Assad from Syria told the troops orders to shoot anybody who was out after 9 p.m. Assad characteristically made sure that the imposition of that curfew remained unannounced. So the announcement was not made to the citizens of the border of Iraq that if they ventured out after 9, they would be shot. So they did not warn the people, according to this. That part of the evening is the traditional time for socializing and visiting, as the towns and villages come alive in the cool of the evening after the day's torrid heat of 120 degrees. This is the desert. The troops suddenly opened fire on the stunned and terrified populace, leaving a total of more than 3,000 dead and dying in alleys and doorways. So it seems like these people on the border of Iraq were probably Iraqi relatives, sympathizers, friends. So they had to be murdered. All of this in response to rumors that there would be civil disturbances in Deir in opposition to the troops Assad was sending to Saudi Arabia. This concerns me on a couple issues. Well, one, whenever they do whatever they're going to do in the USA or Europe during this kickoff to this New Age, New World Order, some event, will it be like this? Well, when the people start to radicalize and revolt, well, here in the United States, is it possible? They'll just be massacred. Will they use the chemtrail spraying for plagues? Is there a way to mass murder millions of people in seconds? The answer, of course, is yes. They can do it. And apparently, according to the USA Georgia Guidestones, they do desire, and many other books I have and have gone over, they do desire a huge population reduction. And according to some of the Zionist Jewish books, the Gentiles, the Goy Goyim, are to be completely erased from the planet. Those who are not kept for slaves and worker slaves, sex slaves, entertainment slaves. Put them in an arena, have them kill each other. It was a commercial I saw the other day. It's just too much to believe. I couldn't believe it, which seems to happen a lot lately. But this building was put on lockdown. I mentioned it in a previous video. And the speakers, the TV screens, the monitors came up and a voice said, whoever kills the most people will be allowed to live. And so they were told they all had to start killing each other and the survivor would be allowed to live. As far as I'm concerned, you would think all the people would just say no, but they didn't say no in the commercial. How far have we gone? Hunger Games the movie. They're telling us. The Illuminati card games. Told of 911. The Simpsons cartoon animation program has all the symbolism. You can look it up on YouTube. There's tons of it. Emmys, Grammys, Katy Perry's Super Bowl halftime shows, Madonna, Beyonce, Lady Gaga. They do these rituals. You look it up on YouTube videos, satanic rituals during Emmys, Grammys, football, TV. You'll see it. People have studied this, exposed it. But nobody seems to get outraged. Everybody just passively sits back like a zombie and probably thinks, there's nothing I can do about it. Maybe they think, and I've had people tell me this, you know, Rick, you're right, but I'll be dead when it happens. One lady was holding her granddaughter, and I said, I'm looking at the kid thinking, but that granddaughter's going to be alive. Don't you care about your own descendants? Aren't we as humans concerned about our own being and welfare and race and our children and children's children? Are we so far lost that we don't? Are we so sucked into the beguilement and deception? While the rest of the world, even down in Brazil and Venezuela, the suffering is going on, floods, and Venezuelan people starving, no groceries, when Venezuela has more oil and more gold than any place on the planet. Something's wrong here. Somebody's controlling the situation. They don't need the people, and it would be convenient if all the people were to be dead. Alright, so this is what Assad did in Syria at the behest of the U.S. and probably NATO and Israel. Israel keeps a disguised, or I should say hidden, background as the leader behind all of this. They don't want to be seen on the front pages of the newspaper. Then Assad's police moved to the province of Haski, adjoining Iraq near the Turkish border, and the police killed an estimated 1,600 people in broad daylight in the towns of Fejman, Birbidin, and Al-Haski. The hardest hit cities were Hans and Hama, the scenes of the prior genocidal campaigns ordered by Assad. Haman, a stronghold of the Muslim Brotherhood, was razed in 1982 with all 10,000 inhabitants murdered by Assad's tanks and planes. So at this particular point in time, 1990, Assad was working with the U.S. To go into Iraq. The secret police troops who committed the bloodletting belonging to Assad's minority Alawite sect. There goes that phone. Alright, so Assad's people were a minority, an Alawite sect, an esoteric mix of various religions with mainstream Muslims regard as anti-Islamic and anti-Arab. So Mossad's elite troops, the leaders, were not Islamic, religious, or Arab proponents, supporters. I warn you again, my friends, that for Assad's reliable troops are now stretched very, very thin. The bulk of Syrian conscripts are Muslim, 80% of the overall population, while officers' corps is drawn from the Alawite sect. So we know now in 2017, going on for the last seeming like 10 years. When did they start going into Syria? 7, 8 years ago? And again, if you look up bomb buildings in Middle East, you will see that they are totally destroying the population, apparently, according to this, the religious Islamic population, which believe in Jesus Christ, that he was here on earth. And their religion means to submit to God. So these are religious people. And then, of course, here in the United States, the communists and the New Age, New World Order Zionist secret society, Masonic organizations, Illuminati bankster types have been working feverishly to discredit Jesus and Christianity. And so the God-fearing people will be destroyed here also. Those who have not already been turned towards the dark side, away from God, and who will denounce God and tell you to your face there was no Jesus. They were denying God. And it says in the Bible, those who deny God are writing their own faith. Fate. F-A-T-E. Oh my, you don't want to do that. Just my opinion also. Let's see here. The troops sent to Saudi Arabia are Syrian Muslims under the command of Alawite officers. U.S. Army intelligence is quite realistically completely concerned that a shooting war would prompt the Syrian soldiers to kill their own officers, particularly since the great bulk of the Syrian population is pro-Iraqi in this current conflict. This is but one more example, little sleepyheads, he's calling us sleepyheads, that the establishment media has marched right along in lockstep with orders to not report the ramifications of the confrontation with Iraq. The Muslim world, 1/5 to 1/4 of the world's population, is enraged by the Western intrusion into the holy places. Remember, the Israelis, the Jewish wealth, controls the United States, even since 1913, when they created the Federal Reserve, in cahoots with Woodrow Wilson, the Rothschilds banksters. Since they controlled our money, they controlled our politicians, and hence they controlled our country. They crashed the system 8 times and fleeced the American people and even the farmers and everybody of their businesses and property. Nobody's acutely aware of that. Nobody really believes it. And if they did, what would they do about it? The leaders of many of the Arab countries, based as they are on the vestiges of colonial governments, the leaders of many Arab countries, based as they are on the vestiges of the colonial government, so the leaders are puppets put in power. And puppet regimes, that's what it says here, are severely threatened by their alliance with the West, portending a massive anti-Western Islamic explosion that will have severe consequences for decades to come. So 9/11 was planned. So I don't have too much more to go on this video, but I certainly have some very important information on the part 2 of this video. Anyways, this one says, come to think of it. Assad rules one of the few regimes in the world to be labeled by your State Department as sponsors of terrorism, and is directly implicated in the downing of Pan Am Flight 103, which killed 270 Americans. In just the same way the U.S. in the past cozied right up to President Saddam Hussein in Iraq and overlooked his nasty little habit of slaughtering his political opponents and waging genocide against rebellious ethnic groups within his borders, if that be true, the U.S. is teaming up now with the most unsavory of Middle East despots, such as Assad, Morocco's King Hussein, and the medieval ruling dynasties of bloodshed, power and greed of the Persian Gulf nations. What kind of pride can you feel for your governments now? How much blood is spilled on your hands, and like Pilate, the Roman leader, you will later wish to wash your hands of it, but it will be too late. What was the price? Well, let's look at the deal. This is 1990. This guy wrote this Phoenix Journals. They knew what was going on. Washington, D.C. and politics. It's quite a lot of material. I've been looking at these things for years. And I've gotten a lot of my information from these when I went and researched what they talked about. On the day of Baker's arrival in Damascus, Syria, the Syrian government announced that it would send the first contingent of the promised 20,000 troops, more or less, into Saudi Arabia, an armored division of 10,000 men, and 300 tanks with necessary personnel. So the United States had recruited Syria to provide maybe a whole flank, a whole military unit. Syria would also provide information to the West on the activities of the Palestinian Liberation Organization and other enemies of the Israeli expansionism. That's what it says here. Last sentence. So back in 1990, everybody knew, insiders, but they didn't tell the American population. Now comes the payoff from the U.S. citizens. So they took money that they say we owe now in support of Israel's interest in return for these favors. So Assad was sending troops to help us with Iraq when President George Bush was going in there, 1990. Assad had been promised $800 million in immediate aid, with more to follow later, and the granting of most favored nation status, giving Syria products entering the U.S. preferential tariff treatment, as well as other trade benefits. Nasty politics. These leaders turn against their own people. Turn the turnkey. It's the headline here. President Bush has also given that lovely reward to Egypt for cooperation. So Egypt was paid off too, with our taxpayer money. And he will forgive Egypt's $7.1 billion they owe us. Military debt. So they're going to forgive them of $7 billion, but they say we American people owe 30, 40 trillion right now. And they say that, I guess, every baby born right now, or before it's born, owes $1 million to the government in taxes because to pay off the debt. So you know where they have to microchip us in the future to have a slave population so the people, the corporation of the USA can pay its money. Of course, they'll have everybody think they have to do it for other reasons: terrorism, biodiversity, sustainability, global warming, climate change, aliens coming from space. They ship foreign people into our cities at night right now from the Middle East, those that are still alive. Or are they actually hybrid people, not even human? Is there a more devious, evil situation being set up? We're being infiltrated. Let's talk about that. All right, so what happens here with Assad in Syria? Now, he does end up in a crunch for Congress, President Bush will only approve this action if and when Israel's military debt of $4 billion is also forgiven. So they need Egypt's assistance to take out Iraq, and promised Egypt that would forget about the $7.1 billion they owed us. But our own Congress said, we won't agree to that unless you also agree to forgive Israel of $4 billion that they owe us. This debt is not that good old World Bank's money. This is not the World Bank's money. This is U.S. taxpayers' money. So apparently when our government said we'll forgive you of it, our government assumed that it would pay it. Signed some documents to the World Bank or whoever. This money is owed to every one of you nice taxpayers. Oh my, the politics, the stuff they don't tell us. At the same time, your vultures hover over Andrews Air Force Base near Washington, whatever happened to congressional sittings at the Capitol, trying in vain so far to come up with a formula to reduce the deficit by a relatively paltry 40 to 50 billion for this coming fiscal year. Your annual deficit is about 300 billion, so our expenses exceed our income by 300 billion a year back then. And we're involved in all this taking over the world and going into Iraq so Israel can expand. If they didn't come up with the plan by October 1, the government will run out of money. They've been doing this for the last 10 years off and on, scaring we the people, even threatening to cut off Social Security checks and welfare benefits. You know, a measly 1 billion when we're talking 300 billion here. It's costing them trillions to wipe out the Arabs and take over the world. At least half the deficit reduction is expected to take the shape of new taxes. While your taxes are being raised, Bush and Congress are forgiving Egypt's and Israel's debt to the taxpayers. The government alone owes some 2.3 trillion. At the same time, there are millions of workers losing their jobs here in the U.S. and the world because their companies can't pay the interest on their own debt burdens. These unemployed workers are losing their homes because they can't afford the mortgage payments, and millions more can't even begin to hope to buy a home in their entire lifetime. All in the plan. It's all planned. This is back in 1990. Sounds familiar? So he asked the writer of the Phoenix Journal, this particular issue, asked this question. Does anything even annoy you as a nation? So he's asking us, doesn't any of this stuff annoy us? Forget about making your blood boil. Aren't people concerned? And generally speaking, a lot of people are oblivious. Look at the sky spray going on with chemicals. So many people are just completely unaware. Or the HARP transmitters, the microwave and sonic transmitters. And you can see the ripples in the sky sometimes. If you know anything about electromagnetism. Radio waves. Lots of them. Not good for human health. You think they know that? Of course they know that. American farmers are literally being turned out of their farms that have been in their families for generations because they can't afford to stay current on their debts. This is all controlled, planned. They're weakening America, one person and one farmer, one town and one state at a time, slowly, slowly, slowly taking away our country. Their property is being legally confiscated through corrupt undercover and fixed judicial deals and bribes. So that's all I'm going to read. There's much more on Mossad in this journal. Only printed out probably 50 pages out of 250 pages, whatever. And you can see I highlighted there's a lot of stuff here. We've got to go over. So thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle reporting.